Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with Andrew Armstrong of Dawnforgedcast today. And it looks like you guys are going crazy in the chat already. There's two people just talking, but there is a bunch of conversation already happening. So thank you guys for coming to hang out with us. So we're just going to do kind of like a general discussion. We both have a shared experience with our first time at GenCon, so that was kind of cool. So we'll start there and work our way out from there.
Yeah, we were just chatting before the stream started about how you and I are both kind of introverted, and Gen Con was an interesting experience.
Yeah, like I've had people say to me, like, well, you're such an extrovert, because they know me from YouTube and doing videos. Mm-hmm. And like, you were just discussing how, well, when you're shooting videos like that, you're in a confined space, you're in a closed space with, in your case, just by yourself, or me with just a couple of my buddies. Makes a big difference.
No, it's like right now I am in very comfortable clothes. I'm in my basement. I've got my control in the zone, and if I need to take a break, I can load up another game. I can do all sorts of things. But at the convention, there's no, like, at least for me, there's no escaping. There's no getting that alone time to recharge. And it was really an honor and a privilege to play with people, to have people come up and recognize you and thank you for what you've done. But like a part of me is just like, I want to get out of here. I want to go. I need to be alone just a bit.
Like you have to be on all the time.
Right. Yeah. Outside of, it was once we got into our game and you and I were in a game together, and then you filmed us doing an improv panel. That was a nerve-wracking day, except when things were actually happening, right? Once the game had started, we're in the game. We know the game. We know what it's like to be characters in a fantasy realm, and that just kind of flows. But everywhere in between, I've taught school, so I know how to be, but they're my students. They're not like my peers. It was just a very eye-opening experience. It did bolster the confidence a little bit. How did you feel about our game and those kind of things being more live?
So, all right. So first of all, like, my first experience with like this kind of thing would be when we went out to LA for DM tips, right? Mm-hmm. And that was even more highly produced, more production. And now the only plus side, there isn't as many people around, right? But you have someone going beforehand, well, you have this much time for that and this much time for this. So in your mind, like, it derailed us a little bit. And I think our DM tips would have been a little bit better if we didn't have that preamble beforehand, and we could just do our thing and they just chopped it up however they need it. Because you're consciously thinking, oh, am I going to go too long? Do I have to wrap this up? But then you get out to Gen Con for the Maze Arcana game. And again, you have that higher production, you have the crew running around, you have cameras, but then you have like 50 people sitting in front of you, getting ready to watch your game. So, at first, I felt a little bit like the red monster from Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes. But then, once the game actually started, and it's like you said, you're in your element, you know what you're doing. And not only that, like you have a focal point, like you have the GM, the focus on.
I barely looked at the audience.
Yeah. Now, I kind of would have hated being Rudy in that experience and GMing in front of all those people. At least, like, we do it online all the time, but you're just looking at this little camera and, like, even when I'm gaming with people online, sometimes I was like, well, just focus on the people that are in this room with you, and on the screen. Everyone else doesn't really exist until you go into the comments.
No, absolutely. It was, and you can empathize that having an audience react in real time to things you say, things you do, was a definite weird and new experience for me, or at least it's been a very long time. I did theater in high school, but that's like 15 years ago. And it was, I would do a thing and people laugh. that's like they might be laughing at home, or I'll do a thing and then there's no one says anything. I'm like, oh no, that was not as good. Where kind of in the bubble, the chat's delayed. The chat may not, I mean, we don't get their immediate reactions to things. That when you had, you know, your character doing certain things and you had people kind of talk or respond to it. How was that kind of feeling?
You know, I got a little distracted by the chat because of something someone said. I want to jump into that real quick.
Go ahead.
No. Nicole Kelsey, you know, asked me to put out a call to anyone who is able to help out and donate to the Red Cross in Texas, because they're in need. And that's why I kind of got distracted. So absolutely, that is a great idea. Thank you for bringing that up, Kelsey.
Sure.
And so what was it you were saying? I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, it's the experience of having an audience reacting live to what you were doing.
You know, it was kind of cool. You know, I was, you know, the audience was a great audience, right? It wasn't like, it's not like we have people booing and hissing and heckling.
I was like in my like dread leading up to it, expecting people to throw things at me. And, Dawnforged sucks. You shouldn't be up. Like, no, of course the trolls don't show up to real life things. They don't come in person. They're meek and meager in actuality. And it was just really pleasant people.
So yeah, so like their responses were like, you know, all positive. So I think for me personally, that just kind of fuels me on and you know, lends to what we're doing. And you know, and also being up there with like such an all-star cast it makes it easy. It makes me want to role play more and get better.
No, that was a great I wish we had, of course, my general experience with tabletop gaming has been that everything is better when it's not a single session. Everything is better when it's long form and you have gotten to know each other better. You've discussed and gelled your characters a lot more beforehand. So all of that could have benefited the game, but for what it was, I thought it was a really enjoyable experience. And you know, we kind of gelled pretty well as a group, had some fun moments. I think maybe it's a little differently or different experience to perform rather than play. I know it's, and you've been putting out games and stuff too, that there is an element of, especially like when we've been doing with Save or Dice, that it's not really as relaxing, like just being in a game, no cameras, nothing, with your friends, and you can kind of, I don't know, maybe you feel this or not, but being on camera has like, I gotta be funny, I gotta make like outrageous moments and those kind of things to make the audience entertained. Do you feel any pressure like that?
Yeah, absolutely. You feel obligated to perform for the audience. That's exactly what it is. And yeah, that can come in different forms depending on persons, whether it's like you said, being funny or being really dramatic, but you know, something to make them feel and respond and react. That's definitely there. Like, you know, me and Ted were talking about a different game and you know, having people in it. And while there's certain people we would like to play with, we wouldn't put them in that type of game. But, you know, for that reason. Now, you know, one of the things that was a lot of fun at GenCon was getting together with Cody and GM Juice and Doug and my son, and was just playing a game with no cameras rolling and just, you know, just doing our thing and having fun.
That would have been great. I'm sad I missed that.
We tried, man. We tried.
You didn't invite me, and either I was probably dying of exhaustion and sickness.
It was last night anyway.
Yeah.
We're literally like, you want to do the thing? And they're like, yeah, let's do the thing. And then we probably shot out a text message. Right. We're like, we need a GM. What's Andrew doing?
That I would just be, yeah, well, he's the one who's got to do the work for this.
He's the professional, man.
Yeah, well, and I do have some material prepared, ready on hands. But I'd say like we learned a lot at GenCon this year, the first time doing it. I would say probably the first time, as far as my knowledge, that there was a significant presence of, we'll call it Twitch and live streamed YouTuber kind of content. And maybe that's just kind of ego, like, oh, there was nothing before I came. But it got the sense, at least from the people I've been interacting with, it like this was also their first time. And I definitely planned incredibly poorly use of my time and things like that while I was there. But next time, even scheduling in very specific, doesn't even have to be broadcast, just to get some play time, I think would be really awesome.
I ended up playing in 3 games. One was with you, one was the pickup game, and then we did a demo of Perdition for Cypher System.
Okay.
And that was basically it. But I guess part of it too, there's certain things at GenCon that I'm not going to be able to do anywhere else. So, right. Like meeting people and networking and hanging out and that kind of stuff. So just like you, I didn't really have a plan when I got there. Like, it's funny because we both had the same thing where we were front loaded. All of our stuff was actually the same stuff. And, and then after that, it was kind of like, I was just kind of cruising. I had like a couple appointments, but other than that, it was, it was just kind of like playing it by ear.
Well, I had those that big day, and then I had scheduled myself I ran a game for just anyone can sign up and play. I scheduled a few other things. And I realized, no, for people like you and I, this is not a vacation. This is not a casual thing, or it could be, but this is a business trip. Seth, who we now know in common, was really kind of pushing that too. This is where you schmooze. This is where you meet other people, you build connections. And I had no semblance. I'm not a business savvy person whatsoever. No kind of realization that that's how I should be best to be using my time. Those LA people, Gig and Sundry people, they all knew that. And clearly I don't know if you sensed like that they were a little more aware of how this is done.
They've been doing it longer.
Right.
Is a big part of it. And, they're a lot of them are also all kind of networked in anyway. It's like, sometimes I feel like, do I have to move out to LA to make this thing work or make it better? Or what is going on there? Doug has a question.
I see Doug's question. Isn't it great when people start their question with the word question? Who came up
It is. It does make life easier.
I'll read Doug's question.
Okay, shoot.
Do you bring that performance back to your private games? I know I do. My home games are much more theatrical. That game with Cody Juice, etc., was a great example. So I guess I can answer that. There's been like, absolutely. I have, in fact, it's even easier for me to do so. It's kind of my natural disposition to be performing, and we'll call it charismatic, which is why playing Jardin with an 8 charisma has been a very interesting challenge to not be so gregarious. But some of the games that I run that are not broadcast, I get into character so much like more freely, I guess. But absolutely, I recently had Urki. If you play Sunless Citadel, if you know that, Urki Timbers is a gnomish cleric. That's the extent of his description in the book. So I made him a pastor of the light, and I just got so into it. My brothers and sisters, my fellow adventurers, we can seek towards it. And it just like was liberating and so much fun to just get into character without feeling like I had to, I guess.
That's funny because during the GM improv, you pulled that character out.
I was pulling some of my regulars, my staples to, because that was pretty, like, we had no idea what we were gonna do up until Brian's like, okay, so here's the rules, like as we're sitting there.
Yeah, I was glad it was you and not me.
I didn't get to DM, which at the moment was, I don't have to. I was going to be last and had to go after everyone else, including Matt Mercer, who there's some professional jealousy, I'll say. He clearly knows what he's like. He was great. Everyone was really good. But he felt like the boom, I'm into it and good to go. So I was kind of happy I didn't have to go after that, but ultimately it was kind of a bummer to not show off my GMing stuff too. But it was okay. It was okay.
Everyone on that panel did such an amazing job. It was so much fun to actually watch.
That's really great to hear, and the audience going, like, getting the reactions that they did. It felt really like that was kind of I know how to game, right? It's my thing. It's my job. But improv is something that, while it's part of tabletop gaming, is not necessarily something that I've done in front of an audience since like high school or early college in theater company. And it was, and we're not able to look at each other really because we're all looking at the audience. So to be able to play off one another was a little harder than it would be normally when I can see other people. But I will say there were a couple inspired moments. I don't know where the inspiration came from, maybe some deep, dark place, but snorting dandruff, I really just, that just took over completely and felt cool to be, you know.
I kind of just shotgunned your Gen Con videos because I was like, hey, he's doing Gen Con videos. Should I be doing Gen Con videos? I don't know, maybe. But hey, if you come to PAX Unplugged, man, maybe you'll get another shot at it.
It's hard. It's like next month or something, isn't it?
November. It's in November.
What? Well, I'm doing BlizzCon at the beginning of November. I already have that sorted through. I'm not sure. I don't know. Like, there's part of me, and I do see we have some questions, so we can cut me off and dive into those. But after going to that convention, GenCon, I definitely felt the pressure suddenly kind of well up that I have to go to everything. Because that's where the networking is happening. That's where the schmoozing is happening. That's where the audience is. And I can
You're going to get to the next level.
Yeah, it feels like that is part of it. But the other part of me says, oh God, it's not, that was so draining. That was so tiring. I just getting over the con funk sickness. I've still got my Burt's Bees ready, available.
I think Maze Arcana went to PAX the next weekend.
Right? I think they did too.
So like I don't know how they do it. So I did Origins, I did Gen Con, and I'm going to do Unplugged. So I mean that's not too bad. There's a little bit of space between those. Now sticking LA in the middle, that made it a little bit more harried as well. But you know, what are you going to do? Their work cases.
I grew up in San Diego, and we would go to Disneyland, sometimes go up to LA every now and again. I hated the experience. I like mountains, Dave. I like mountains. I like clear air. I like trees. And while there would be a bump for sure to be in LA, to have capable people helping me with things like lights and sound and people to play off of, it just doesn't feel worth it ultimately.
Also, I don't know if we could afford it on our YouTuber salaries.
Right? It's way more expensive to live there. And if you don't, of course I don't know the Geek and Sundry's finances, but it seems like, you know, having a 1.5 million subscriber YouTube channel and website and other things, sponsoring what you're doing is probably a pretty good way to go about it.
It's a little more on that, but
sure.
So Donald does have a question. I figure I'll jump in here and grab some of these.
Yeah, let's do it.
As a GM, what have been some of your favorite things that GM used that you added to a game you saw a player as a player in another game? I think there's some words missing there, but that's okay, Donald. So I think the gist of it is, what have you seen as a player in another game that GMs have done that you've incorporated?
You know, it's hard to sift through. Like, I would admit clearly that I'm an amalgamation of a lot of things from a lot of different people. that I've seen that were really great, good practices, best practices, we say in the teacher trade. And I can't honestly remember where they all come from, but that I have certainly been influenced by others. I'll have to think on a moment if I can kind of pull away a certain, I mean, I maybe I can't cite the origin, but the idea of getting rid of my Dungeon Master screen was a very early innovation, likely inspired by one of my earlier DMs who, because it's like this barrier between me and the players, and I like to gesture, I like to get up, I like to move around, and that getting rid of that was a very early innovation. Taking notes during the session, I'm sure, was not my own crafting. Planning out a lot of kind of my skills also came from teaching education. But maybe let's pass it back to you if you can kind of pinpoint anything specific.
So there's a lot of weird stuff for like where me and Ted kind of have picked up things from each other over the years, which is kind of funny because, you know, I did most of the DMing early on, so he learned a lot of his DMing from me. I would say it would be a fair assessment. But then over the years, I've also picked up things from him. At some point, he started standing when he DMs. And so I don't sit when I DM anymore, which allows me to have a screen and make big gestures and stuff. And I still roll my dice out in the open anyway. And half the time there isn't anything behind my screen other than the notes I'm taking as I game. So like for me, I've definitely done a lot of that. One of the biggest eye-opening things for me was actually early on was when someone first kind of introduced me to storytelling as opposed to just, you know, rolling the dice, kicking down doors and killing monsters. A lot of the games online really have opened my eyes up towards more towards player agency and letting the players taking more control in the world. I would even cite like GM Juice and Andrew Knapp or you know, David Sims. These were some of the early guys that I gamed with online, and you just got introduced to so many more concepts. Like we've always had this contained group in a bubble, right? Like we didn't go to game stores. We were vaguely aware of the internet as far as gaming went, and we just played. We'd find friends or friends of friends, and we'd always be able to fill the rosters. And we, you know, which is great in some ways because we've built these lifelong friendships, but it was horrible in the sense that we weren't exposed to new ideas the way we get exposed to them now. Like the session zero, that's a completely new concept to us. Things that maybe we were doing, like the 5-room dungeon, we didn't have a name for it, you know? So it was like early on, like the outside creeping into our games was like Dragon Magazine.
Yeah, it's a whole new realm and situation. A lot of my, and here, I'll give you I've been copying down the questions. This is what I usually do, is copy them into a Google Doc. And that way I can answer them at my leisure. So there's a link to that. But I definitely, we sound a little curmudgeonly a bit, but to people starting the hobby playing online, and not just playing online, but wanting to even immediately stream themselves doing it. The idea of everything is broadcast and everything is recorded, and I'm a guy with a camera, so that's good enough, is rather new, and definitely was nowhere present when you and I were learning. I was 14, so it's 18 years ago, learning this. Internet was there, but not really. There was I was just whoever you met at school or at work or whatever. Those are your gaming buddies. And you're right. They were fairly insular in how do you expose yourself to new things, and without the internet, without these kind of videos. So there's definitely a plus. You wouldn't necessarily know of certain styles and certain approaches. And absolutely, I would say I've benefited from that. Although to be kind of from the beginning, the idea of broadcasting ours was, and it remains a very weird thing to watch other people play. Can't do it. that other people would be interested in this is still hard for me to fathom. I get the reasoning. You know, I've talked to people about it, like, why do you watch it? And, oh, well, it reminds me of my groups. I can't really play right now. I get ideas. It's great entertainment. I get that, but I don't know. I'd rather be playing. So
I'm the same way. And also, it's a huge time investment. Here's a good question from Kelsey Nicole. Do you guys find it hard to not metagame? You want me to take that one first and I'll pitch it to you?
Fire away.
Pardon me. Actually, no. Not metagaming is literally just coming to the conclusion and the decision that you don't have to win D&D. And if you're struggling with this, you already know that you want to metagame. And I'm not saying it's not that I never want to it's not that I ever don't want to metagame, but I've made a conscious decision that I'm not going to do that because my character doesn't know it. And, you know, the only thing we get to control as players is our character, right? And when you metagame, in some ways, you're actually trying to step in and be part DM. So it's just a matter of letting it go. You just have to accept that you just don't, your character wouldn't know that. You know, maybe there's some ways you could go about getting information, but your character should go through that process, and it should be different for each character because that's the whole point. You're doing characterizations if you're role playing, and you're trying to define those as you go. And it's tough in the sense that you're writing your own guidelines that you have to stick to. So it's real easy to go, oh, well, you know what? I want to just do the thing and win. But I feel like it's so much more rewarding if you don't do that and you just play the character that you have. And even like in the Save or Dice game, I do things that are counterproductive to the party, not to be counterproductive to the party, but because that's what that character would do. And not so much in a way where it's going to disrupt the game, but it's going to add different elements and make it interesting. That's the key too, right? Like, you don't want to ruin other people's fun. But if you have a character that's kind of knave and that lacks guile, you know, for him to give away the secret isn't really a big deal, and it should create an opportunity for everyone else to then role play some more, not to break the game.
Yeah, absolutely. The metagaming situation and issue, I think, is very much something that needs to be discussed as a group to come to it. Same thing with alignment, same thing with what is fun. All these factors really need to be talked about and said, are we, you know, how will we treat metagaming? Is it something that we as a group are going to work towards not doing? And you know, what is it? What does it look like? How do we handle it if it comes up? And if you're not intrinsically, like, people ask, how do I punish my players for metagaming or something? If they don't want to immerse themselves in the character and try to act as if they are the character and only operate in that knowledge, you're not going to punish them into being able to do it. Negative reinforcement rarely works. So it has to be kind of a consensus and an encouraging that we can, pretty much every other game you're going to find in the world, metagaming is an inherent part of it. You are not in the game, you are playing the game, and you're trying to win the game. And there's a lot about D&D, or a lot of approaches that people can have to it they're coming from other games where the goal is to win. And it's perfectly reasonable. You shouldn't be chastising and punishing people for metagaming. It's a very natural thing to do. And you have to untrain them. You have to show and, you know, make an appeal to them that this is something that you might really enjoy, something that you can't accomplish in these other games. But you also have to kind of realize that there's going to be an element of metagaming no matter what. The fact that you are, when you get to combat, for example, you're looking down at a grid. You have a sense of movement, you have a sense of positioning, and it's really hard to purely immerse yourself and make all your decisions solely from the eyes of your character, because you don't really actually know in the full picture of what your character is seeing and experiencing. So there's definitely going to be degrees of success in your attempt to go after this. You're much more likely to succeed if you have everyone on board with all wanting to and seeing and valuing this kind of approach to the game. And that ends up being, for me, and I think for you, as you just said, an incredibly rewarding experience when the goal is not to live as long as possible or kill as many things as possible. What you're after is, I want to play this character as authentically as possible. And I win when I'm able to do that, when I'm able to understand the character more, to develop the story, to create interesting, engaging situations, to connect with the other characters. That ends up being something so much more rewarding than you would have access to any other way in most other games.
So, Lords of the Storm, how do you add a new character for a player whose old character recently died? So I've come a long way on this one. I used to be like, it has to make sense for the story, and that was the only way. But I've come to the point where I just don't care that much anymore, and I just want to play the game and have fun with people. If I can work it in, and a lot of times, admittedly, I'm pretty creative, I'll do that. But if it's a decision between having someone sit there and watch other people play the game and have fun, and just having the player in the game, you know, without a good reason for it to be there right now, then I'll just have them play.
And you can see why my videos end up being so long is blah 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 blah. But that the idea of fun, and I go off on these tangents about what does fun mean to you, and what does it mean to the rest of the people? And you can't say, oh, the goal is fun when we clearly don't agree. Fun for you is, I want everyone's character to make perfect sense and all have interwoven everythings and connect to the world flawlessly. And then a fun for someone else is, I'm not so bothered with that. I'd really like to just be in the action of the game. So I'm going to just kind of make it happen that your new character can just kind of show up and move along. Fun is, my character died, so I'm not having fun and I quit because I don't like losing. Fun is supremely subjective. That's why we really encourage conversation. So there's a lot of different approaches to the Lord of Storm's specific question. I find that it usually works well in some, but there's no one right answer. In some situations, Dave is absolutely right that, just let's all suspend our disbelief as players and just accept this new person showing up on the scene. And if I can, as a DM, right, I'll give them a good reason for being there. Other times it's, I want to make sure that your character is connected to something that's already happening. So you're a cousin or a friend or part of the same faction as one of the PCs, or you're part of a faction that the party has interacted with. You have a vested interest in what the party's doing. You work with the DM to develop that. That helps integration work a little more swiftly and more motivation. But if you look at, old school style gaming, we'll say the OSG and not OSG, OSR and Dungeon Crawl Classics and White Box and those kind of things, you had just like a stable of characters. And when Biffer the 6th died, Biffer the 7th showed up, and on you go. And they didn't really matter so much. Have you noticed, or like I'll ask you a question, felt any kind of downside to all this emphasis on story and character, and like, does it just get in the way of the face smashing fun?
So I like story and I like character development, and I also like face smashing fun.
Mm-hmm.
And like, for me, the measuring stick is everyone able to do something in the game? And obviously, if you don't have a character there, you can't. So so like, it becomes a moot point. It's funny though, like you just reminded me. It's like, so essentially what you're saying is D&D invented spawn points.
That for sure. Like, well, I I would say as a kind of experience, or at least my experience of that older school style play, was just you'd roll up 5 or 6 characters at the start of the session, you put them off to the side. When one died, the next one would, there you go, on you go.
Well, I just think it's funny because like everyone likes to use the video game analogy as a negative. And you know, like the big sticking point for 4th edition was they tried to roll some of that back into the game, thinking, well, it'll have a broader appeal, and we've kind of been using this stuff anyway. Why not actually quantify it? And you know, and when they did, they got a huge pushback. But it's like, it's funny whenever I see those things pop up and you go, well, no, it was there before. We just called it something else, or we didn't call it anything.
I think 4th edition, not to get on that, but 4th edition is perfectly fine. Most of the people who don't like it never actually looked at it or played it. It's just popular not to like it. And it's 95% the same as every other edition in modern times. And they just named, like, instead of auto attack, so I swing. Instead, I use my Viper Strike. And it's the same thing. I think it's been grossly overblown, and I think you can have a ton of fun in 4th edition, just like any edition. I think it's silly to hate it. But yeah, the video games, to kind of dismiss and look down on them is to, one, cut yourself off from a ton of great ideas. D&D encounters, if it's just like, hey, you guys line up and there's some orcs and you go and you until one side dies, to me, that's incredibly dry and boring and uninteresting. But when you borrow certain kind of combat encounter mechanics, say from something like World of Warcraft, where you have phases in the encounter, the dragon starts off on the island, and then you fight it, and then spirits rise out of the island. The party has to battle the spirits while the dragon is swooping down, and then they are able to shackle and banish the spirits, and then the dragon absorbs them and comes crashing down again and has duplicate, like, so much more engaging, dynamic, interesting stuff I feel comes from that video game idea. And there's a lot of great things there. I think we just have to get away from, in a video game, you beat it, right? Most of the time, you don't necessarily experience it. There's not really that freedom of role play and character development. So that's where you come with the video game mindset, which video games still have a lot of great things that to add to it. But
well, as a friend of mine was pretty adamant about saying, a lot of the RPG talent actually goes there. So that being said, like, all the great ideas from RPGs are being filtered into video games because there's more money and those people get to make more money, have better careers over there, but they're still using the same ideas they would have used in our RPGs. Sure. They just have, computer engines that implement them now. They have cyber minions. I want to jump into roll call, guys. If you guys want to start off letting us know where you're weighing in from. There's like 80 people in the chat, which is awesome. It's great you guys are all hanging out with us today. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on, Andrew.
Yeah, I've got a quick thing I want to see if your audience, the first person to get this reference, message me and you can win some swag that I got from ThinkGeek. Where is this from? Okay, that's all you get.
So did you guys get that? They're gonna have to rewind to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So they're starting to weigh in. We've got Friganator in Linwood, Washington, Louisiana in the house with Ghetto Stabulous, one of my favorite usernames there. Evil Silly Putty's another great one in Minnesota. We got Lincoln in Sweden. Kansas is in the house with Adam Foisey. Nathan Davis is in Franklin, Tennessee. Jeffrey is in Vero Beach, Florida. AJ Kenny is in Lopez Island, Washington. Brian F., New York City. Cannibal Loco is in Argentina. And where else we got? We got Australia with Tesmic MC Squared, Wisconsin, D. Perry, Sacramento, California, Aruba in the house with PMK 108. Sam is in Portland. Ben is in New Brunswick, Canada. Utah with Regilio. We've got Sue Rainey chiming in from Atlanta. We got Kyle. Too much smoke, can't tell location. Doug from the website is in Cleveland. We've got New Mexico with Zaref Gaming. Rob's Cleaning Service with Oregon. The businesses always crack me up. I don't know why. I'm just easily amused. Why Just Why is in London. We got Columbus, Ohio in the house with Geek and Undies. We got Patrick from Sweden. We got East Chester, New York in the house with John. Adam. Nope, that's not a location. Lavoyer is guessing, I think. And we got Larry Brown, Nerdarchy trucker, rolling through Iowa. Thanks for doing that job. It sucks, but somebody's got to do it. And I can say that because I have done it. I guess unless you like it. We got Germany in the house with Dummy URD, Texas with Abigail, and Forget the Table is in Montana. So we got people weighing in from all over the place.
It's pretty amazing.
It is. It's crazy. It's how small our world is. That we get people from all over. And I always love it when you say someplace like another country and there's like several people there. And they're like, are you guys all together watching this? What are you guys doing over there? But apparently not. So what's your biggest takeaway from GenCon, man, other than you need to go network more?
The biggest takeaway is probably strep throat, but besides that, yeah, really learning to schedule better, to organize my time a bit more and focus on like I don't know that I'll have a normal con experience or should, exactly whatever normal means, but that I think that we would all benefit. It's networking. I mean, there's nothing really bigger than that as far as what I learned. The experience, spending a lot of time with some of the patrons who've been supporting me for a couple years now, was really, really awesome to meet them, to get to know them better. Because I don't know if you found in the people that you met, but there's kind of a one-way relationship. In you watch me, you know all about me, I only know your username, kind of a thing.
Maybe
in some, in some situations, but when you get to know them and they're great people, they're gamer people, they've got all these experiences, I really kind of miss out on that a little bit from being online so much. So it kind of encouraged me to do more things in person for sure. And I guess one other thing was I may dip my toe into the mini wargaming camp.
I heard that somewheres.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, we're my wife and I are expecting our second child, so maybe I shouldn't. Thank you. Spend a fortune on these things to not have anyone locally to play with so much. But I don't know. Did you get to meet with the Wild West Exodus guys?
You know what? I saw them and I got the minis, but I did not really. And they also had some like awesome cosplayers out hanging out at their booth as well. But I did not really talk to them per se. There's just so many vendors, so many things.
It was enormous. The amount of things to do and places to see and people to talk with. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have announced that baby just yet. We did tell we just kind of came out, but
is that a Nerdarchy exclusive?
It is for YouTube. Yeah, I've told a couple other people, but I guess that yeah. So I took away a lot of things. It was great to be like just doing more things in person. I think had a really strong appeal and connecting with other people. What about you? And then maybe we do like a lightning round to answer as many of these questions
Yeah,
brief as possible.
So for me, like actually one of my big concerns was bringing my son with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, because I'm there to work, I was kind of concerned about messing up his experience with GenCon, and but he had a really good time. You know what he really enjoyed? He really enjoyed hanging out with Juice and Doug and Cody from Taking 20. Like that there were big things for him. I'm sure he probably didn't mind getting a hug from Satine Phoenix either. So he got to.
She hugs often.
She's a hugger. That's for sure. I got to say hi to Adam Cabal, and just meeting
place on the panel.
Yeah. When like you said, I like getting out there and I like to meet the fans, and I like to be able to personally thank them for watching our videos. It's one thing when we're on here and we're like thanking everybody at once, but it's completely different when you can shake someone's hand and look them in the eye, or give them a hug, or whatever, or sign a book for them. And it makes
kind of weird doing autographs.
So we've had a couple outings. So we've been doing that for a little while, and it is a little weird. And I wish, unfortunately, like I have this thing that I sign every time, and I wish I would have if I picked something smaller. But I think it was at RapidCon. Juice had Ed Greenwood do a dice blessing for me.
Okay.
And it's and his thing is may your dice rolls always be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I always just like kind of sign it and quote Ed Greenwood, just because I thought it was a cool thing. But when you sign like 14, 15 books at a time, I'm like, oh my god, I need a stamp or something.
Right.
But
are you Nerdarchy Dave? Is that the whole thing, or is it Dave Friant?
Nerdarchy Dave.
Because I didn't know what to write. Like Dawnforged is me, but that's not me too.
Like figuring all that stuff out is kind of
it was really because I could sense that at least a lot of the people in the audience after our game were Maze Arcana fans, and very rightly so. Satine fans, most specifically, and very rightly so. So it even amidst that, to have someone in person, and again, it's happened a couple of times, but like really emphasized here was, thank you so much. I really help your videos really helped me. I love your content with your wife. It helped me get my wife involved in the game. And seeing them, shaking their hand, it really meant like you can do it online, and it means a lot here too, for sure. But just something like I took the time to come to this convention, and I could be doing anything else, but I'm here because I support you and I really like you. And it was.
I think it's funny they're giving you all kinds of suggestions about how to sign your name.
Dawnforgedcast Andrew. I here's what I did for most of the books. I did Andrew Armstrong. Then I said Happy Gaming -DFC. That's what I did for most of them.
That's pretty long too.
Mm-hmm.
Wait till you have to do like 20 of them. You're like, oh my god. You're by the end you should be like DFC.
Well, we yes, that could be doing that. Satine had like 80 hearts and stuff around hers, but I found it was interesting that they were having us sign Matt Mercer's campaign book. Like, I know we really like most of my stuff is digital, right?
Yeah.
But, like, does Matt want like Dawnforged in Nerdarchy signing inside his books, or like? I mean, cool. It was just a surreal experience.
Have you seen Step Brothers?
Some I don't remember it, but I think I saw it. Yeah.
So I bet a bunch of people had it, and like the one brother is like, I had this katana signed by what was it, Randy Gage or whatever the guy is from what is it? One of those reality shows. I forget. But he's like, why did you have him sign this? It's because all I had on me. What else was I going to do? And I think that's what they do. Although, when we sign PHBs and DMGs, that makes a lot of sense because we spend a lot of time talking about that stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. It's again, I say the experience was that Gen Con 51. I will be so much more relaxed and so much more understanding of what's happening, prepared. And I mean, it's a whole year from now. And what kind of fruits will be yielded from the seeds planted this year, the connections made, the relationships, cultivated. I can only imagine it'll be bigger and better. It's not the 50th, but we have something to build off of now and move forward with.
Absolutely. Although, hopefully we'll get to hang out at more events. Like I said, I'd love to see it PAX Unplugged. I think that one's going to be good just because it's the first one. I think it's supposed to be booth bearding for Brian.
It's Philadelphia, November 17th through 19th. I guess I could look into it.
It's tough, man. You have to pick and choose. There's another one in Texas that's supposed to be really great to go to as well. I always forget the name of it. I have to look it up, but it's not until like June or so, but it's all like industry people. So it's like you're playing it's smaller. It's not like a Gen Con or Origins or a Dragon Con. It's smaller, but like you're playing in all these games and it's like you're playing with the creator of the game kind of deal. So that sounds kind of cool. I've had a couple people tell me about that.
I am overdue for a trip to Texas. My most of my family on my dad's side is in San Antonio and Austin. I spent a lot of time there, kind of when I was growing up. So I haven't visited in a little while.
Also, we're in this Saber Dice thing together too. So who knows, man? Maybe we get a lot of us together. We could do some Saber Dice events or something.
Absolutely, that'd be awesome. I think playing in person is, to me, definitely the best way to play, the most enjoyable way to play, and going from playing online to playing in person. But we've had time to get to know each other and develop our characters and get comfortable with each other. I can imagine that would be a really fantastic gaming experience for sure.
I think so too. Or even doing a panel together, getting all of our fans together in one place and just hanging out and having fun.
Absolutely.
Maybe a big pizza party. I don't know. Whatever happens.
Pizza. I'm a big fan.
We've done that twice as Nerdarchy so far. When we went to Tampa, we were just like put out a call. Hey, we're going to be here going on this cruise, but we'll block out some time. And I ran a game for like 5 fans or something like that. And then when we did LA, and which is, oh man, that was only like 6 months later. It was up to 2 games with 8 fans, and we had like 15 people show up. So that was pretty cool. So we'll see if we can't keep multiplying every 6 months. With little hangouts.
That's what I'm feeling. That like things move quickly online, and there's kind of an exponential element to once you get. Like it might take someone like 6 months or a year or 2 years to get, let's say, 10,000 subscribers, but then the next 10,000 happens much more quickly, and then more and more and more, and as you kind of interconnect with each other, more and more kind of gets yielded from that.
So you said you did some stuff with patrons, like was it a group thing or individual things?
So there were 2 guys, Mike and Rob, who have been supporting me for a while at a very significant pledge level. And I've been gaming with them online for better part of a year or 2. But we coordinated that we would be pretty much any of the events that I didn't have. I tried to hang out with them. So Mike was, we got to go out to eat, and he was the kind of wargaming initiator for a lot of things. Rob, he really liked this True Dungeon thing. I don't know if you got to do that, but we went with kind of a group of his friends and did True Dungeon. We did an escape room, going out to eat, kind of things just getting to know them better and interacting in person. Just there wasn't really much worriness about them exactly, because I'd done so much with them online. But once we started doing things in person, it just was so cool to, and I felt really blessed, right? Because they're like patrons, you know, they're supporting everything I do, and that all they wanted was time. Just hang out with me, and you know, I'll buy you dinner, I'll buy you, like, all this stuff was just, it felt like so blessed to be with them and be able to interact with them and play some games with them in person. So that was, and there was a few other patrons who I got to meet and talk with just a little bit. And while it's great to meet a fan, it's even greater to meet the fan who makes it possible that you can have fans, that you can go to this convention, that you can devote so much of your time and energy to this hobby and bettering it and giving it to as many people as possible. It was a little sugar daddy. I got it in a small degree, but I mean, that's
no kissing and telling. No, absolutely. And you know, I want to get to the point where we are personally doing more with groups, you know, whether it's small groups or bigger groups, but this way we can get more interactions and you know, maybe there will be some opportunities coming up in the future, especially as we do more stuff with Saver Dice and this collab work. I think it'll be easier for us to get, you know, substantial groups together so we can do things like that in the future, and it'll probably be a lot of fun.
No, if the person is willing to support you financially, then there's unless there's some deep sinister whatever, which is not, I haven't encountered it. It's that they not only like kind of you as a person, but I think even bigger is liking your message and wanting that to grow, wanting to promote that, wanting to facilitate. They understand. And also, you know, there's a big difference between on YouTube, which is totally free, and I'm willing to put money, my hard-earned money, and give it to you because I believe so much in what you do, and I really want to support you doing that. That person willing and able to make the commitment are like, there's just a level of responsibility and of respect, of encouragement, but I'm mostly kind of saying that they're a little more of a mature kind of person in most cases, because they understand that there's only so much time and only so much energy in life. And if you spend it on A, you're going to have less on B. And they understand that your time is not free. They understand that you can't just, for every single person who comes to you and asks for an hour of your time, which many people do online, you can't do that. And so I really, it's deeply humbling. And I just found that the patron people are willing to support with their money. What you and I and others are trying to do here is just so like meaningful, that not just that I have money to do it, but that they understand that this is not an effortless freebie thing that you can, oh, he Dawnforged, he should just, you know, review my thing and, you know, run a game for me and do, like, you know, I have other things to do, and it's frustrating when other people don't understand it, but it's really encouraging that there are some who do, and they make all the difference.
I totally get it. Everyone, you know, you get bombarded with stuff, and it's like, there's not enough time. Mm-hmm. So, Lavoyer, I will money match any of you in a Super Smash Titles and or D&D Pathfinder PvP. LOL. So I think Doug was pointing that particular comment out as a way to game with a lot of people at once, or make a lot of people angry, one or the other.
We have taken a look in kind of PvP tournaments, like a Coliseum kind of gladiator tournament to get more people involved. But you got to realize, this is not meant to boast. This is more meant to illustrate my difficulty at managing things, and how Like we're approaching, and we'll celebrate soon 100,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. It's an unfathomable number for me. But I thought, oh well, the Patron community, that's it. We have 479 patrons. That's a massive thing to kind of even handle and organize and facilitate. It's just it's incredible that how quickly this hobby is growing, how much there is to do, and is just, I wish there were 100 of me and I can work, 24 hours a day. And even doing so, I don't think I would keep up. But thankfully there's community, right? I don't have to do everything. I can send people to Nerdarchy for this, or they can help each other. I mean, this is a group game. You play together and we can support each other outside of it too. And I
think you'd really be able to empathize with what I discovered when I went out to LA, and that was going into the Nerdist and Geeking Sundry bullpens and looking around and going, oh my God, I do the job of all these people.
Right?
You're like, there's 8 people here and they all have different jobs and I do them all.
Yes.
At some point.
Yes. It's nuts. Like, and not only do you and I do all these jobs, we are not trained. I am not trained in doing 90% of what I'm supposed to do. I had to teach myself or learn the barest basic enough in order to make it work. To have a trained group of people who are all like, each one of them is individually specialized in this skill or that skill. Holy cow. I mean,
this kind of dovetails into Dummy URD's question, right? Because his question is, how do you guys handle running multiple games a week? I don't feel like I could come up with cool stuff in more than one game a week. Like, literally, like, that's the easy part compared to like all this other stuff we're talking about right now having to do. And I feel probably me and Andrew probably have vastly different GMing styles. You probably do a lot. I get the impression you do a lot of prep and a lot of writing, and I improv a lot of what I do.
I would say it is a lot of improv still, but I would say I'm somewhere in the middle where I will have kind of a loose lesson plan outline, and I can even share right now. So these are my notes for a session I ran last night. I don't know, you can see it so well, but this was them. And most of the notes are this song puzzle that I came up with, but otherwise it's mostly just bullet points of kind of the session layout. And I have the prep, like the real area of prep comes in you're playing online and getting the roll 20 pieces or fantasy ground kind of stuff set up. So I've got a lot of folders of maps and notes and pictures ready to use and stat blocks and other things to make it. So there's some prep as far as the material, but as far as coming up with ideas, yeah, that hasn't been a limiting factor. It certainly could be. I understand that, but running multiple games, I have my situation. I have no shortage of ideas. I have too many. I wish I had less so I could just do the couple ones and not like, oh, I want to do that now.
And if you're willing to lean on your players, I feel like you'll never run out of ideas. When you start trying to make it all about your ideas, then yeah, I can see that. But my players will do something, or I'll introduce something and they'll latch onto it. Well, that becomes a whole nother subplot or arc that can happen, either because they introduced it or something I put in there as a throwaway is now important to them. So, it means I'll circle back to it. It gives me more material to use.
Oh, absolutely.
So Gaming had a question. Any advice on running my first stream? We actually did a video on this. I was surprised to get more views because so many people are playing via streaming, whether you're streaming for people to watch or just for you and your group. But the medium definitely changes how that pretty much operates.
So you are experiencing the frustration of We put out a video on a topic that a lot of people ask about. We do a good job explaining it. And then for the next 6 months, we keep getting people asking, hey, how can I do this? You know, like, I made a video on this. Please look over the channel. You find answers to everything. We did it.
Yeah.
I get this question every single day of my life. People will ask, where do you get that program to make your character? Where do you get that character sheet? Every single day. And so I have bookmarked the link to the video accessing the character sheet where I explain it. But I guess it's just frustrating that, like, we did stuff on this. Why, like, please look at the videos we've already done. But I guess you and I make too many or something.
But that's part of it. And you know what? The search feature isn't really all that apparent sometimes, I feel like. So people don't know it's there. Like, I kind of stumbled upon it later on. But, you know.
Well, let me answer the question then. So gaming online, you and I have actually both made videos on this, but was this from Christopher Knight or Zareth?
This one was from Zareth Gaming.
Okay. So I'm sure audience interaction is super important, but I may have a different, and there's a style of game that the game is us plus the stream, right? We are going back and forth. What you say in the stream, we talk about, we bring up, we're paying active attention to it, and we're cultivating this community, and that's definitely important to do. However, there's also the I'm so busy working on the stream and the chat and those kind of things that I'm neglecting my players in my game. And I would say it depends on your skill set and how well you do at multitasking. But I would say it's probably better, if you can, to just focus on running the game well, appoint one of your players or even a third party to manage the stream, the chat, and those kind of things, and just get more comfortable at doing this online, at looking in the screen, at you're going to have a ton of sound issues and video issues and lag issues. So adding on top of that, I have to immediately make this appealing to other people and have to manage them and have to keep appealing to them and all these other things at the same time is just, you're setting yourself up for failure. So delineate, and I would definitely run some pre first streams, you know, make sure your mics are all working well, your readers are working well. Tell your fellow players to make sure they mute themselves before they cough, things like this. But don't the experience still has to be at the core, at the absolute core, those players and you having a really great time together, having a really great game. If you don't have that, I think ultimately the audience is not going to buy in the long term. That's been my experience.
Also, too, I think you have to look at like what you're doing and why you're doing it, right? Is the other thing, like, because I mean, technically, if you're just using it as a medium to play games, then it really doesn't matter. You can ignore the chat. It won't matter. It could even be closed and not broadcast. Like, so, but I mean, you're probably correct in the fact that he's asking about streams. So he's probably going to be putting it on Twitch or YouTube or something like that. And I've seen way different philosophies on this as well. You have Maze Arcana where Rudy's like, I don't want my players looking at the chat. I don't want them engaging with the chat. I don't want them to know there's a chat there. I just want them to play D&D. That, you know, they're kind of like, this is our home game, and we're putting it out there for people to watch. But then you have like Encounter Roleplay, and they're like completely Hunger Games style, where you as the viewer are actually, you know, act as patrons to the players or the monsters, as the case may be, where you're spending money to influence the game, and you know, you're buying crits for or against them, or sending them magic items or a monster even. So there's tons of different styles out there, even within streaming. You know, Critical Role has their own way of doing it, where it's, you know, a tightly produced and broadcast thing, and they're going to be just doing the game, and they're not going to be interacting with the chat. They're going to have like separate people for that, kind of like what you said about a third party, and you're going to have like everything in between.
Yeah, absolutely. So evaluate those styles and look at them and consider them, but realize also another factor is you will be, if you were doing this 5 years ago, there was not so much content available for people playing games and or broadcasting themselves playing tabletop games online. Now, I would say there's a glut of it, at least for my perspective, that you no longer have any guarantee of standing out just because what you're doing is tabletop gaming. It's booming. And if you put the success and enjoyment of the people who are at that game hinges on how many people were watching us, how many views did we get, and if that's low, you have a bad time, that's very likely to happen given current climate. Okay, so that's why I recommend really that at the core, if no one watches this or 100,000 people watch this, we are still having a good time, really enjoying this game and hobby that we love. If you're just doing it for the views, I think you're, one, probably not going to get them, and two, even getting them, there's a lack of satisfaction that comes. And I think true fans and audience members are kind of feel out the shills versus the clearly passionate about the game. I think that has to be kind of in your thoughts. I think it's the same thing. Like if you were gonna, oh, I love League of Legends, so I'm gonna start streaming League of Legends, or League of Legends is popular, so I'm gonna make $1 million YouTube dollars by putting out League of Legends videos. There's a million other people doing that, and your motivation will be fairly clear, right? There's a lot of important considerations, and at the heart of it is I love doing this, and I would do it if no one watched me, which for tabletop gaming for the longest time, no one, like, it was just you and your friends, and you didn't care about an audience.
Oddly enough, my son keeps saying I should stream League of Legends.
Are you any good?
I am horrible.
Yeah, me too.
My mom has been done by so many 12-year-olds. It's not even funny. I used to enjoy playing. I would still enjoy playing. I just don't have the time for it. And one of the things that I've always enjoyed about that game is I could go in, play for 45 minutes, and kind of be done. That was like the major appeal to me. And then, and then my son had gotten into it, and he still plays with his friends. But I don't even think I have it installed on this machine. So
yeah, video games are still a big part of me, but I mean, I have like some Let's Plays of stuff, but I found it can almost inhibit the enjoyment of it when I'm too worried, again, like we mentioned way back at the beginning, about being entertaining and kind of stuff. But I have had some video success and some enjoyment in making or converting, and you guys like doing conversions, League of Legends characters to D&D. I've done a few of those, and they're pretty neat. 5e is not the most robust system, so you have to like homebrew a whole bunch of stuff to make it possible. But maybe you and your son could work on that, and he might enjoy that process.
We have done a lot of different things. You know what the hardest part for us as Nerdarchy with doing those is us all actually liking the same things to like cross over. It's like one of us is familiar with a thing. I think Ted and Nate and I did the Dragoon from Final Fantasy, and I'm like, I barely even know what Final Fantasy is, so it's me just asking them questions and filling in blanks and coming up with things, but they pretty much did that. And then there's other things where maybe in the comic books, like I tend to be more knowledgeable, so we have to go back and forth with that kind of stuff. Or we just did Mumra the other day, and like me and Ted were all over that, and Nate is like, I barely remember that cartoon so long ago,
right?
So that's always the tough thing, is like, because there's three of us is trying to line up, or people, you probably get the same thing all the time. They're like, hey, why don't you do this character or that character? And I'm not into the thing, and it feels really disingenuous for me to try and D&Dize characters that I'm not into.
Right.
And I've had discussions in the past with other people where, hey, you could do the research and do the thing, but it just doesn't feel right.
Right. It's hey, I'm really passionate about this thing you've never heard of. Will you please spend a dozen hours learning about it and then make a character version in D&D for this thing that you have no idea what it is? And sometimes they don't even give you context. Like, hey, can you make what would be your version of the Orinkata? What? Like, I have to go Google this thing now and do all this stuff. And you're asking me to do it in 5e D&D. 5e D&D is like, the answer is you have to make it up. You can't accomplish it with the tools that they give you without shoehorning in a ton of stuff, right? To make it work, you have to reflavor, reskin, or remake the new things. That's just like, if you ask me to make it in Pathfinder or 3.5, absolutely the actual rules and mix them together. I don't know if you've experienced that. Like, making something in 5e is, for the most part, like naming it something differently, and everything else you kind of just have to describe it differently.
We just cheat. We just treat me like, yeah, this guy's got 50 levels. It's the only way it works.
Well, let me say thanks, Kyle. Glad to have you back.
Or some reflavoring, but that's part of the fun, I guess, as nerds anyway, is like, literally, these are the conversations we had in our gaming groups before we were doing this stuff on the internet anyway. So yeah, and 5e can be a little tough for some of those things. That actually comes back to my core thing of when someone asks me, how would you play X in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons? And I'm like, well, if that's what you want to do, because that's the system you're comfortable with, go right ahead. But if you're asking me what I would do, like, I wouldn't. There's this game called Star Wars. So if I'm going to play Star Wars, I'm probably just going to use that game.
How do I build a Shadowrunner in D&D?
Yeah. Or there's like really good generic systems for doing that kind of stuff. But D&D is not one of those.
No.
D&D is really good at D&D.
Yes, absolutely. That comes up very often.
I know. I'm fairly certain we get similar questions. So, we're closing in on an hour and a half, so I want to shut this bad boy down. I still have to run to the gym with my son, but I want to thank everyone for hanging out.
After this,
what's that? Oh yeah. I want to thank Andrew for spending so much time with us today. It's been a blast. You guys, appreciate it so much. We've been at a rock steady like 65 viewers. We dipped up to like 80 or so in the chat, which is always awesome.
All over the world.
So with that, guys, until next time, stay nerdy.
Dun, 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 dun.